close my eyes and I can see a world that's waiting up for me, that I call my own. Through the dark, through the door, through where no one's been before, but it feels like home. They can say it all sounds crazy. They can say I've lost my mind. I don't care, so call me crazy. We can live in a world that we design. 'Cause every night I lie in bed, the brightest colors fill my head. A million dreams are keeping me awake. I think of what the world could be, a vision of the one I see. A million dreams is all it's gonna take. A million dreams for the world we're gonna make. Hi, everyone. It's an absolute privilege to welcome you to this session titled Setting the Stage to Meet Your Mission. I'm Dr. Mallory Heffelfinger, and I hope that this welcomes you in the midst of your dreaming about what your classroom space could be this year. I want to take a moment to just share a little bit of a story of and a background of who I am. And I think back to spending some quality time in both my dad's office as well as my mom's classroom. And thinking back to my dad's office, no matter which state we were in or which role he was in within his work, I found that his office looked the same. And so in my adult years, I started asking some questions about why that was and what the pieces in his office represented. And so these are some photographs of what his office space looks like. And he shared with me that these pieces represent his leadership philosophy. And so there's two questions that he asks himself. And the first is, what does it take to lead? And his response to this is vision, direction, time, money, a little heart, thinking outside the box, keeping some things confidential, being willing to put in your 2 cents, putting your name on something solid and lasting, caring for something beyond yourself, realizing that others have gone before you, doing what you like and liking what you do, keeping a matter of faith, and being kind to others. And so each of those components of leadership are represented in the pieces that he has sitting on his desk. And then secondly, he asks himself, what is the most precious commodity we have? And he answers that with time, represented by the large clock that's much larger than all of the other components in his office that you can see in photo on his wall. And so got me to thinking about what space represents and the pieces that we put in our offices or our classrooms and how those can be a representation of who you are. And then in thinking about my mom's classroom, you can enjoy this picture of younger me fully embracing the theme of Heffelfinger's hikers in my mom's classroom. And so this is a photograph of me spending some time in her classroom that had this theme of just bringing the outdoors inside. And this is truly a representation of my mom and what she enjoys and fond memories of hiking as a family growing up. And bringing the outside in, but also the idea of a journey, right? A hike is a journey, and the growth that happens through that, the ability to think and process in the great outdoors. And so that kind of set the stage or the environment for the culture and climate that my mom was trying to represent in her own classroom. And then fast forward to my senior year of high school and doing college tours all over the state of North Carolina, and had the opportunity to visit the High Point University School of Education. Interestingly enough, in my tour on High Point's campus, I was guided by a student majoring in graphic design at the time. And so, as she walked me through the School of Education, it was interesting that she took so much time to focus on the graphic elements of the building. Everything from the colors that were selected, interestingly enough, the primary colors that you would typically associate, particularly with elementary education. Also, the amount of children's literature represented in frames on the walls and on the bookshelves and the children's library that's featured there directly in the building. And then also just the amount of different variety of seating options and opportunities for students to both collaborate and work individually. And so, in exploring all of this, I really started having just some interest of what the purpose of a space is and how it truly contributes to the environment that's established there. And so I found it interesting, this quote from Moore and Lackney, who are school architects, shared back in 1993 some similar questions. They asked, what is the connection between school buildings and education? Is it one of simply housing children and teachers who will get on with their work independent of the condition or character of the buildings? Or is the connection more intimate, that sound buildings designed in particular ways will aid the goals of education, both academic and achievement, and social emotional development? And so here's a glimpse of who I am today. I'm currently serving as an assistant principal in Chatham County Schools. I spent the first 4.5 years of my career in the classroom, teaching both first and third grades. I received my bachelor's in elementary education, my master's in educational leadership, and my doctorate in educational leadership with a curriculum and instruction focus, all from High Point University. So I spent 8 great years there learning from a fantastic faculty. Up until my current school, I spent my time in Title I schools. Each of the schools have had a specific focus area, including STEM, arts integration, and currently dual language. I've also spent time learning about standards based grading and implementing that in my classroom and school. And part of that was embracing student data tracking. So, really empowering students to have direct access and control of their data through week to week progress monitoring, and then also looking at your beginning, middle, and your end of year data. As you can tell, classroom and school design is a passion for me, and I've also gotten my certification for being a Pear Deck coach, a Google educator in levels 1 and 2, and interestingly enough, a therapeutic horseback riding instructor. And so, as I began my journey as a classroom teacher, I certainly felt like designing a classroom was like setting a stage for what I hope to accomplish in the classroom. And Moore and Lackney, those same school architects, agree with that, saying that designing a classroom is like setting a stage for a play. While the stage won't guarantee that the play will be a critical success, it will very likely help. And so I embraced this journey of being able to set up my own classroom in a way that met my mission, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. As I was in the classroom, I also engaged in the dissertation process, and so I really wanted to take a moment to dive deeper into these questions that I was forming about the classroom space and how that truly guides teaching and learning that happens in that space. And so I found that these 4 questions really addressed that curiosity for me. And so, number 1 is, how do elementary teachers plan the design of their classrooms based on their pedagogical practices? Number 2 was looking at how elementary teachers plan the design of their classrooms based on their learners' desires and needs. And so, shifting away from themselves and focusing more on who they were serving within the classroom. And I will note that I focused specifically on elementary teachers in this research, number 1, because that was my comfort area in terms of that's where my experience and expertise was. Those were the connections that I had at the time, but also looking at the research, much has been done at the secondary and collegiate level, but nothing had been performed at the elementary level yet. And so I really wanted to dive deep into the elementary setting specific for this study. Third, I asked, in what ways do elementary teachers allow students to self-select learning spaces throughout the day? And lastly, when given the opportunity to self-select those learning spaces, how did students determine the best space for the task or activity? And so what I found is that teachers tend to plan the design of their classrooms based on the school-based strategies, district initiatives, research, students with disabilities, student behaviors and student interests. And so teachers' design of their classrooms is truly based on outside influences that are coming to them, whether that's through social media or professional development or district and school meetings. And that looking at their learners' desires and needs is typically seen through an assignment of a desk or table that they use as their home base, and then allowing the self selection of learning spaces and more independent work time, such as guided reading and guided math. And the teachers determine the most appropriate method for allowing students to self select those learning spaces based on their schedule, the student's ability levels, the type of task that's being completed, and the behavior that's present within their room. And then, when given the opportunity to self select those learning spaces, the students said from their perspective that learning spaces that they select are based on their comfort, the amount of distractions that are in that space, and their proximity to peers while being in that space. And then diving into a few more findings that I found in doing this research, not necessarily directly related to those questions that I originally asked, but I did find that teachers are prepared and confident in designing an inviting, comfortable, and functional learning space for themselves and students. And so teachers, and I will say that these were all teachers coming from a traditional background in elementary education, or similar. Some came from secondary and had moved down to elementary level at the time that I was doing my research. But in general, they had some knowledge of how to set up their classroom. To that contrast, though, they do not appear to be equipped with how to plan the design or how to make adjustments to specific spaces within the classroom based on their learners' needs and desires. And so, really, it was kind of the idea that they were able to set up the classroom at large in an inviting and comfortable way that really allowed students to be excited about learning and taking part in that classroom. But when it came to understanding specific spaces within that classroom, breaking it up into smaller pieces, that's when the teachers demonstrated that that just wasn't a strength for them. Also, teachers' pedagogical preferences are mostly linked to their schools or district initiatives and professional development rather than being established from their own educational philosophy and to their own idea of what education and their role in education should be, much like you saw back on one of the very first slides when I shared my dad's leadership philosophy and how that is integrated in all the work that he does. Next, I found that while teachers provide a variety of options for students, they still rely on the traditional desks, tables, and chairs where students are assigned to a specific space. And then lastly, while teachers feel that students are not capable of selecting these spaces themselves, the students actually suggest that they are capable of self-selecting learning spaces that meet these criteria. And I think this was the most interesting part of my research, was being able to talk directly to students and get their perspective. And so the implications of this research suggest that practitioners should take time to reflect on their pedagogy or their methods of teaching and how they can reflect their individual qualities through the implementation of their pedagogical practices. Additionally, educators should be encouraged to develop educational philosophy statements that form a basis for the decisions they make regarding their classroom design, pedagogical practices, and decisions regarding students' learning and well-being. So really diving deep into who you are as an educator and why you're doing what you're doing. Next, research and professional development should be implemented regarding learner profile, strategies for meeting specific student needs, support services that are available for consultation when needed, processes for expanding or refining a student's intervention, remediation, and enrichment services, and resources available for redesigning or adapting learning spaces in order to meet learners' needs. That encompasses a lot that was really outside of what I was particularly looking at in the research, but Truly being able to understand the resources that are within a building and how tapping into those resources can really help you as a classroom teacher to meet the student needs. And that transforms to the space that you have set up in your classroom and how that really sets that student up for success. And then last, found that a more commonly used and understood definition of the term flexible seating needs to be developed. And so flexible seating doesn't just mean the wide variety of options you see on Amazon and Pinterest and TikTok and all the social media platforms that include the yoga balls and the wobble stools and the cushions and those different things, but really how you use it, right? So is seating, you can have all those different options, but are those being assigned to students by a teacher, or students really having the opportunity to self-select these options and take ownership of them? And additionally, is there an opportunity for them to be flexible with those options, to rotate through the options that they have throughout the day, or are they stuck with one choice from beginning to end of day? And so in this session, I've already shared research on how the design of space impacts teaching and learning to some extent through my dissertation research, and you got a glimpse of that. But I do want to spend the rest of our time today proposing ideas for transforming spaces within your own classroom by providing you some exemplars of spaces for staff and students within school buildings that I have personally taken on as a challenge. And then I want to supply you with some guiding questions to consider before setting up your classroom space and invite you to create a set of graphic notes that will serve as a framework for setting up your own classroom. I do want to note that it's important to kind of have a common definition of space and an understanding of what I'm referring to when I say that. And I found this to be very important as I was working on my dissertation research, because the term space or classroom can be referred to in so many different ways. And so I found this definition useful in my dissertation research, and kind of use this as the foundation for what I was referring to when I shared the word space. And that is that space is neither innocent or neutral. It is an instrument of the political. It has a performative aspect for whoever inhabits it. It works on its occupants. At the micro level, space prohibits, decides what may occur, lays down the law, implies a certain order, commands, and locates bodies. And I think the biggest component of that is that space is truly an instrument for meeting your mission. It's truly a way of representing who you are and of serving the people in your space, and in this case, the students that we have in our classrooms. And so during the remainder of the presentation, given that we are focused on the design element of our spaces, I would like for you to graphically record the ideas, the thoughts, the inspirations that you have as we continue through this presentation. So I'd like to give you a moment to locate the following materials. You'll need a blank sheet of paper and some writing or drawing utensils. So just to share a little bit about what graphic recording is and why we use it, it's just a way of capturing and organizing information in a meaningful way. So you're using a collection of words, shapes, drawings, really whatever comes to mind or represents a thought or idea that you have. And the reason that we do this is because it helps to engage us. It holds our attention. It changes our thinking patterns and our language. It also helps with our comprehension and really helps us to synthesize the information. And then lastly, it helps us to remember it. And so our retention is much better when we combine words and pictures together. So to start, I would like to encourage you to take about 2 minutes to really consider your school that you will be teaching at. And so some things to consider adding to your graphic recording are the school's name, the school's mission and vision statements, the school's mascot, their school colors, any special programs that they have, like arts integration, dual language, Spanish immersion, Leader in Me, global studies, anything like that, as well as the demographics and then distinction. So thinking about, are they Title I? Are they low performing? Are they nationally recognized for something? So thinking about who your school is, what they represent, what makes the school special. Just would encourage you to use what you know as well as what you may find on a website or social media platform and incorporate this on your graphic notes. So you can incorporate it through words, shapes, or pictures, whatever to you represents your school and who they are. So I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to do that now. And the reason I had you start with your school is because that seems, from my research, to be the primary resource that teachers use in the way that they set up their classroom and the way that they teach within their classroom, the pedagogical practices that they use. But as I mentioned earlier, your room should be a reflection of you as an individual. And so I would like to encourage you to also add to your notes an element of who you are. And so this time you can consider adding your name, your why, so the purpose that you're serving as being an educator, the color palette that you would love to use in your classroom, or maybe colors that are meaningful to you as an individual, any professional experiences that stick out to you. And I really think about this in terms of our residency teachers who bring so much value to education and the other professional experiences that they have outside of the field of education. And so I think about people who have served as bankers or architects or scientists, and they bring that passion and that experience into the classroom to share with students and all the real world experiences that come to life in their classrooms. Also, thinking about inspirational quotes, images, or figures that are special to you. Any personal interests, for me, that would include hiking and fishing and horseback riding and animals, being outside. Areas of expertise for you. So, what are things that you are excellent at doing? And that could be professionally, that could be a hobby or something personally that you're invested in. And then any distinctions that you have, or things that make you unique, things that make you you. So I'd like you to take another 2 minutes and just again graphically represent these on your paper. And so you can include shapes, pictures, words again, um, things that represent who you are as an individual, both personally and professionally. And I'll go ahead and start the timer for that. And our timer has stopped there. So I do want to say I hope that you find this method of note taking to be somewhat therapeutic and fun and interesting all at once. I think sometimes it's good to have a little bit of variety in the way that we process and retain information, but I also think that sometimes just allowing our creative nature to be expressed truly helps us to really reflect in a unique manner. And so now that you've taken some time to add some information about your school and you as an individual, I'd like to share with you what that process has looked like for me. And so, as a teacher, I taught at two different schools. So, one was Sylvan Elementary, located in Snow Camp, and the other was Pleasant Grove Elementary, located in Burlington. And so, I've shared a little bit about each of those schools here. Sylvan had a focus of arts integration, while Pleasant Grove had a STEM focus. And I knew that I wanted to have a circus themed classroom. And so I focused on some elements of that and really being inspired by The Greatest Showman and some quotes that came from that. I also knew that I wanted to incorporate flexible seating. I wanted plenty of space for books and literature to be within my classroom and to be within reach of students. And lastly, I knew that unpacking anchor charts and data tracking were part of who I am as an educator and the pedagogical practices that I use on a day to day basis. And so I knew that I needed that to be within the classroom setting that I designed. And in thinking about setting up my classroom space, I also formed this mission statement going into my first year of teaching. And so this really helped kind of create a core or a foundation of who I am as an educator and the work that wanted to accomplish within my classroom. And so it says in this classroom, the big top, which is what I referred to my classroom as, we are ringmasters of our own learning. We take ownership of our learning through our actions and our words. We are mindful and respectful of our learning environment so that we have a safe and happy space to learn in. We value the growth mindset. We understand both our strengths and our areas in need of improvement. We have the attitude that practice makes progress rather than perfection because we know that there is always room for growth. We make goals, set a plan for achievement, monitor our progress, and celebrate big when we master our goals. We welcome all who come through our doors. Whether big or small, short or tall, sitting in a chair or standing on a ball, we know that everyone's got an act. We value our differences and treasure our similarities. We understand that we all bring something unique to the show, and we are grateful to all be together. And lastly, we have big dreams for the future. We have a million dreams for the world we're going to make. We are leaders in our classroom, school, and community because we know that our dreams and hard work can make a difference. The future is ours, and we are going to make something big of it. And so, keeping in mind both what I envisioned in joining together what my school represented and what I wanted to see in my classroom and who I wanted to be as an educator, as well as looking at this mission statement and thinking about being able to set a classroom space that truly represented who I was and what I wanted the environment, the culture to be in my classroom. These were the classrooms that I designed as a classroom teacher. So on the top left, you'll see the very first classroom that I started with, having those traditional desks and chairs, which were what were available to me at the time. Transitioning to the bottom, same classroom space as pictured above, but transformed a bit for year 2 with some more flexible seating and tables that allowed for a little bit more collaboration and flexibility throughout the space. And then you'll see the final 2 classrooms that I had in years 3 and 4 at my school that I transitioned to in another part of the district. And so, really wanting to encompass that and embrace the circus theme within my classroom and really make it feel like students were entering the circus upon coming into the classroom. And then you'll see the anchor charts and the literature, just the amount of space that was used to bring books into the classroom and making sure that they were accessible to students. And then you'll see the bright primary colors. You'll see the flexible seating, like I mentioned, and then the amount of different spaces within the room that were used for a variety of purposes, whether that be whole group instruction, students presenting materials or projects, accessing the smart board, stretching, moving, collaborating, reading. There was a space for all within the classroom. And then moving into being an assistant principal, I started my time in this position at North Graham Elementary, still located in the Alamance Burlington school system. And so North Graham had an arts integration, and we had a space at the time that was not being used, and we wanted to transform it into our PLC room. And so the purpose of this space was primarily going to be unpacking standards, lesson planning, and reviewing data. And in attending our Summer Institute for Administrators last summer, I found that ABSS was kind of transforming to a vision of being student-centered and future-focused. And then had some non-negotiables that our superintendent shared with us. And so those are listed here. And then also incorporated our school improvement goals. And so we were focused on standards mastery, reading and grade level, and our behavior, and the incidents that were reported to the office. And so with this in mind, I transformed our PLC room to look like this. And so you'll see those primary questions of what, how, so what, and now what shared on the wall. You'll see space for data to be visually represented and reviewed. You'll see our school improvement goals listed on the whiteboard, some anchor chart paper and whiteboard space that allowed for some collaboration. And then you'll see the superintendent's non-negotiables above the whiteboards, or above the whiteboard there. And I'll show some different angles in just a moment. But really, we wanted this school to feel like a home away from home. And so we used this space to kind of represent that, and the soft lighting and the black and white and the plants that were used as we set this space up. And so you can see that a little bit. Closer here, those non-negotiables, the questions that we were using as lesson planning, and then that mission or vision of being student-centered and future-focused. And then most recently joined the Chatham County School System, specifically at North Chatham Elementary as their assistant principal back in March. And so having an opportunity to start with a blank slate again and being able to truly represent who I am as an educator and as a leader, as well as who my school is that I am serving. And so North Chatham is home of the Jaguars. They're a dual language school, like I've mentioned earlier. They have integrated units where literacy has social studies and science woven in. They're located in Chapel Hill. They have pre-K through fifth grade. They have a school garden, some little bit of a diverse community that's a different demographic than what I have traditionally worked with in the past. And then a little bit of who I am. Love school supplies. I've graduated from High Point University 3 times now with 3 different degrees. I have often used the zones of regulation in the work that I'm doing. My colors there, which aren't showing up quite as I would like them to in this image, but soft green, a soft pink, and a turquoise color are meaningful colors to me and represent some of the interests that I have. And then the quote, "Together we can do so much," is an important one to me, and the shared leadership approach that I take as a leader. And so, in thinking about representing all of these components in a space, I was able to design this office. And so, you'll see different components within this space. One is my own space in the far back, represented by class pictures of all of the students I've served while as a classroom teacher, an opportunity to showcase handwritten notes on a magnetic board there, which are important to me. You'll see a meeting space for me to meet with adults. You'll see the "Together we can do so much" quote, quite large there and as a statement. And then you'll see a space for children or students to be able to take part in the office and, of course, access to lots of children's literature. And you may be asking, where did you get all of this? And so just share here, and the graphics didn't transfer as well as I would have liked them to, but some of the shopping and funding resources I use here, and of course I don't endorse any of these, but they are spaces that I have frequented throughout designing and setting up the classroom and office spaces that I have. I will mention that Donors Choose and Amazon Wishlist are excellent resources for being able to share with the community, friends and family who may be supporting you as you set up your spaces. I will just note that some districts have some board policies regarding how you can advertise or access these resources, and so make sure that you know what the expectations are for this in your district. And then I'll just share that Habitat for Humanity resource and Goodwills are excellent sources for you to kind of hunt some cheap resources to use in your rooms and things that you might be able to recraft or repurpose. And I know I personally live close to Elon University, and so I know that at times when students are moving out, or even sometimes moving into their dorms and kind of changing things around or didn't need things after all, these stores kind of tend to increase in the stock that they have. And so that has helped me find some pieces for cheaper prices than just buying brand new. And so, as you're setting up your own space, and I hope that you've been inspired to do so in a way that truly represents who you are and the mission that you plan on serving as an educator in your classroom, I want to leave you with these 4 guiding questions. So, number 1, what kind of climate would you like to create? Number 2, what is the setup that is going to be most beneficial for your learners? And that's just in general right now as you start, as you get into your classroom space and your students start and you get to know them as individuals and as learners. I think that the classroom space kind of adapts to that as you go. And so don't be afraid to set it up in a way that's flexible and able to be changed as you get to know your students a little bit better. Third, how can you teach your students to keep materials organized? And I think that's one of the most critical elements of a classroom is being able to have materials ready to go and accessible to students when they need it. And then how can you prepare yourself to provide the best for your students? And as the educator in that room, you need to be able to have your materials ready and accessible and easily organized, and ready to do your best and most effective teaching. And so really thinking about how you can set the space up for that to be successful. So returning for your graphic notes or graphic recording that you did, you've looked at who your school is, what they represent, and you've looked at yourself as an individual and who you are and the unique contributions that you bring to your classroom. So I would encourage you to complete your graphic recording from this presentation. Take some time to add to it, to dream big, and to think about what you truly want to represent in the classroom spaces that you design. And then as you finish them, take a photo and share it on Twitter. And I'll add that if you tag me at Dr. H_NCE, you will be entered for a chance to win a prize. I'd love to connect with you. So if you would like to reach out to me at any time, I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And Instagram and Facebook are Ring Mastery Learning. This was kind of an account that I set up as a classroom teacher and haven't been as active with it since being in the assistant principal role. I'm much more active on Twitter right now, but hope to be sharing some more things on Instagram and Facebook this year as I get a little bit more settled into this role. So I'd love to connect with you. I'd love to see your digital or your graphic recordings that you have created during this presentation, and I hope this is really set you up for success as you set up your classroom and truly design a space that's going to be effective for serving your own pedagogical practices and for the students who are getting ready to enter your rooms. It's been a pleasure to be with you virtually today, and I wish you all a happy and successful school year.
I close my eyes and I can see a world that's waiting up for me that I call my own. Through the dark, through the door, through where no one's been before, but it feels like home. They can say it all sounds crazy. They can say I've lost my mind. I don't care, so call me crazy. We can live in a world that we design. 'Cause every night I lie in bed, the brightest colors fill my head. A million dreams are keeping me awake. I think of what the world could be, a vision of the one I see. A million dreams is all it's gonna take. A million